copied in its entirety and without modification.
I think he said another bomb.
Another bomb, move back.
Oh my God, another bomb.
Citizen Information Network has prepared this video in response to the growing awareness that the federal government and our established media have collaborated to deceive us about critical aspects of the Murrah building bombing. This low-budget, voluntary effort contains several segments with some overlap and some blurred video footage. Nevertheless, the presentation will help viewers decide what really occurred at the Murrah building, what was the broader meaning of that event and its aftermath, and what level of confidence we the people should have toward our public servants and our dominant news media. The first segment of this tape presents several clips of television news coverage that was broadcast immediately following the bombing. Most Americans are still unaware of the facts revealed by these early reports.
All right, we just saw, if you were watching there was a white pickup truck backing a trailer into the scene here. They're trying to move people out of the way so they can get it in. Appears to be the Oklahoma County Bomb Squad. It's their bomb disposal unit, essentially, is what it is, and it is what they would use to, if the report that we gave you just a few moments ago turns out to be correct, that they have found a second explosive device of some kind inside this building. They'll back that trailer down there, and the bomb squad folks will go in, and they will use that trailer. You see the bucket on the back there, sort of, this is how they would transport the explosive device away from this populated area to try to do something with it.
If you are outside the metro area, you'd have to be well outside the metro area if you did not feel the blast that occurred.
This is just
a few moments ago. People running north away from the federal building.
Now confirmed through federal authorities that a second bomb has been found inside that federal building in Oklahoma City. It was an explosion at 9 o'clock this morning that did that damage you're looking at right there, blowing off the entire north face of that building. Again, you're looking at the north face there. A second bomb was found on the east side of that building. A bomb squad is on the scene. That second bomb has not exploded. We don't know quite the status yet, if they've managed to defuse it, but it has been confirmed that a second bomb was found on the east side of that building. And
Dave Balut here joining me. Dave, what do you have to add?
Well, I just took a look down the street at the Murrah building again. I see another bomb truck going, so apparently they're going to try to get out that third bomb that's been talked about. Still a lot of activity around the Murrah building. Security concerns that another one still might go off. That's what everybody's worried about.
That's the reason they have moved the media, everyone back.
Let's take a look now, if we could. Understand we've just received videotape in a news conference held just a few moments ago at St. Anthony's Hospital. Okay.
This is Tom Caniglione. He's medical director of St. Anthony Hospital. This is Jim Maravich. He is Chief Operating Officer and Executive Vice President of the hospital. I'll give you their cards after the conference is over so you'll know the spelling.
Doctor, can you tell us the situation?
The situation at the present time is that we have treated more than 56 injuries. There have been several more since last count. At the present time, the medical teams downtown are unable to get into the wreckage to retrieve more of the injured because of the presence of other bombs in the area. I've been told by the police department that just as soon as those bombs are defused, they will permit the medical teams to enter. And then once the medical teams enter, we expect quite a large number of rather badly injured individuals being brought here.
Tell us exactly where you were when the explosion hit.
I was in the City Courts building, which is just about 2 blocks south and 1 block west of the federal building, and it was amazing that people walked down in the street and we looked in that direction, and several people said, well, it looks like that's the federal building. Somebody's bombed the federal building, somebody's bombed the federal courthouse, which was right across the street. because really there was nothing else that would explain this kind of force. That's what came to everyone's mind, was that it must be some type of explosive.
Yeah, Mike, hang with us just for a second. We want to update our audience that the Justice Department is reporting that a second explosive device has been found in the AP Murrah building in downtown Oklahoma City. Mike, you're still with us, aren't you?
Yes, I am, and I might tell you in addition to that, in fact, what we were told at the scene a few minutes ago was that, in fact, 2 different explosive devices were found in addition to the one that went off.
So a total of 3,
A total of 3, and, of course, then there was mass confusion whenever there were hundreds of spectators in the area, and when they heard that there were other bombs in the building, people were running from the area in the opposite direction as fast as they could, trying to evacuate again.
And you see the utter devastation that one explosion caused, because here's now what we are starting to learn about the succession, or what someone obviously hoped would be a succession of explosions. The first bomb that was in the federal building did go off. It did the damage that you see right there. The second explosive was found and diffused. The third explosive that was found, and they are working on right now as we speak, I understand, both the second and third explosives, if you can imagine this, were larger than the first. So try to imagine 2- or 3-fold happening what we've already seen there. It is just incredible to think that there was that much heavy artillery that was somehow moved into the downtown Oklahoma City Federal Building.
This report of a second and third explosive device having been brought into the Murrah building was broadcast before federal government officials and a compliant national media at the network level had the opportunity to massage the data, reducing the number of explosives and explosions to 1 and positioning that bomb out in the street, not in the building. Moreover, these anchors reported that it was the first explosive device inside the building that caused the devastation. The second and third bombs were undetonated. Those bombs, in the possession of the authorities, would provide information about the perpetrators of this monstrous crime.
Again, you're looking at, obviously, aerial pictures from Chopper 4. They kept us out for a while because of obvious reasons, and we respect their demands on that.
The reasons may have been obvious to these reporters, but they're not obvious to the rest of us. In the light of later reports of Oklahoma City police bomb squads who brought in a military EOD special bomb squad because an undetonated military bomb was found in the building, we would like to know why this information has been suppressed. Were the media people who claim to be the eyes and ears of the people shut out while federal agents removed security cameras which had recorded all activity in front of the federal building? If we are to trust our government, if we are to trust our media that claims to be independent, we need journalists who are not so deferential to the demands of our public servants.
And that we are now there with our camera and our chopper, and it gives you a bird's eye view of the devastation. Again, one more time on this, because we've been hoping this wouldn't be the case, but it is the case. 6 of the dead are children, 2 are adults from this explosion today. There was a daycare inside the building, and imagine the callousness of setting off a bomb where children are inside. It's mind-boggling.
The daycare was on the 2nd floor, so we would assume that as they were starting to get through their early evacuation and rescue efforts before being called back because of the concern over the other explosive devices, that perhaps the daycare area was one that they were able to get to first.
Light was on in the stairwell. I don't know. I know that some people were still in the building. They haven't gotten to yet. I saw a lot of people very badly hurt. Yeah, there were people were just getting out covered with blood and just stunned. I mean, it was just shock.
Get out!
Get them ready.
As people get back, they kind of
And this is the point now where the evacuations began again, and you can see everybody starting to leave downtown for fear that the exact same thing was about to happen again. Fortunately, it didn't, because the second device that they found, we understand, was even more powerful than the first. They then found a third device, and you can see the look on this woman's face at the fear that she might have to go through the same thing again. They then found a third device, which was also larger than the first. Hard to feel lucky at this point, but certainly through some good work by some munitions experts and the explosive sniffing dogs, further tragedy has almost certainly been averted here today.
The reports I have is that one device was deactivated. Apparently there's another device, and obviously whatever did the damage to the Murrah building was a tremendous, very sophisticated explosive device.
So President Clinton just called Governor Frank Keating, and he says that 3 FBI anti-terrorist teams are en route to Oklahoma City. Right now, they are saying that this is the work of a sophisticated group. This is a very sophisticated device, and it has to have been done by an explosives expert, obviously with this type of explosion.
The reporter said government officials stated the bombing was the work of a sophisticated group. The explosive that went off in the building was a very sophisticated device. It would take an explosive expert to have done that amount of damage. Now, these news reports were all made during the first few hours since the tragedy struck. Given a little time, government spokespeople changed all this. It wasn't a sophisticated group, but rather 2 or 3 men of nondescript skills. Nor was it a very sophisticated device. Why, it was just a mix of fertilizer and ammonia that any old farm boy could put together. And the damage, massive as it was in complete concert with the explosives in a car, later a truck, parked out in the street. Say, isn't it funny how a little time changes things?
Also, we're getting word now that President Clinton is sending anti-terrorism units down here to look over the situation to find out exactly what went on and what other danger may be out there in Oklahoma City. That's something we need to think about, unfortunately, this time, because, as we've told you, 2 other explosive devices were found that were not detonated, and they were larger than the first.
This weather is going to make things far more difficult, unfortunately, on the firefighters down there, because, as we've told you on a couple of occasions now, they are really only just now beginning, thanks to the big, I guess it was about an hour-and-a-half delay or so, while they were worried about the second and third devices that they had found. They are really only now starting to really get full force into the rescue and search operation, going through all 9 floors of the building that are above ground, 4 floors of parking garages that are below.
You talked about the second bomb that was found. Devin told us earlier, we got information that the second and third bomb were bigger than the one that was detonated. 1,200 pounds of explosives in that first one that went off. The second and third devices that were found were actually larger than that, so you can imagine what that would have been like.
Imagine anybody not knowing exactly what's going on at this point, but if for some reason you were just now getting caught up to speed, at about 9 o'clock this morning, an explosion rocked a good part of central Oklahoma and most of downtown Oklahoma City at the Alfred Murrah Federal Building about 9 a.m. this morning. That was the first explosive device. There were a total of 3, we understand, found. Only 1 detonated, and fortunately it was the smallest of the 3. But it was enough to tear away just a huge chunk, the entire front of the federal building. As they started the rescue efforts, they were about 30 minutes into the rescue efforts, 30 to 45 minutes in. That was when they were alerted to the presence of the other 2 devices, and that put the brakes on the rescue and evacuation efforts.
We're getting word of another bomb threat now, Devin, to talk about the 2 after the initial blast. Our crews are being moved back in downtown Oklahoma City because of another bomb threat down there. Are evacuating. John, can you tell me, they have found... The bomb squad is there, west corner of the Murrah building. Is that correct? Another bomb inside the Murrah building.
Supposedly there may be another device there.
Maybe another device there, and they are evacuating the area.
And we'll reiterate again what these later devices are doing to the rescue effort. Time is so valuable right now as they try to get to these people who perhaps somehow are still hanging on to life inside that building. And each delay, every time the firefighters and the rescuers are called back and brought back down off of their ladders and scaffoldings, just could be exacting a terrible, terrible toll on the people who are already inside.
Yes, it is. And we talked earlier about the 2 undetonated bombs ever found that were bigger than the device that exploded. And if this other one that they're looking at now turns out to be something, it appears that it was meant for this building to come down, to be leveled, because of the amount of power that could have gone off. Only one explosion that was obviously tragic enough, but there were more bombs set to go off, according to ATF officials.
It's been about 5 hours now since that first explosion occurred, almost 5 hours exactly. You probably, if you were but 5 hours since, and because of these renewed concerns about new devices, 5 hours in, they are still really not able to get the rescue effort into full swing. Been listening to Mike McCurry, President Clinton's spokesperson at the White House. Apparently at this point we know a little bit more than the White House does, because we have been able to confirm that it was a car explosion. That word coming to us from Mayor Ron Norick earlier, 1,200 pounds of explosives parked out in front of the federal building.
And ATF has confirmed that as well. Devin, we're getting more word on that car bomb now. Let us read this straight from the wire. You talked about it a minute ago. The head of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms now says it appears it was a car bomb with as much as 1,200 pounds of explosives packed inside. 1,200 pounds of explosives packed inside that car bomb in front of the federal building. We heard earlier off the wire that from the governor that some of the fatalities were outside and across the street from the building. Now it all makes sense, because the bomb was parked outside in a car.
We've now moved from 3 bombs inside the building to 1 bomb with as much as 1,200 pounds of explosive parked outside the building. The government official at the ATF will later change this to a Ryder truck in order to accommodate a larger supply of explosives than 1,200 pounds, because that small amount of charge could not do the vast damage done to the Murrah building. But the steady escalation of the amount of explosives on the street and the invention of a bright yellow truck which disappeared without a trace doesn't solve the problems the ATF officials and the obliging media representatives are dealing with. Such a car or truck bomb simply couldn't have taken out those support columns of the federal building. At the World Trade Center bombing in New York, the truck bomb was even larger than the final invention of the ATF at Oklahoma City, and the Trade Center bomb was parked in the garage right next to a support column. Yet all the Trade Center support columns remained intact. Moreover, the explosive force of any bomb falls off at the inverse cube of the distance from the bomb. The so-called Ryder truck bomb was parked outside the federal building. Now, this may all make sense to that reporter, but it makes no sense at all to anyone with a little time to make comparisons and to do some honest reflection.
Now, Dr. Randall Heather is with us. He's a terrorism expert. Doctor, we are just shocked that this would happen here in the heartland of America. Should we be shocked about a car bomb in Oklahoma City?
Well, any place you have a federal building, you have a target.
That's the question everybody has right now. Why here? Why Oklahoma City? And
you find out by finding why that building. I don't think it's material that it was in Oklahoma City. It's really the building. The building could have been in any city in the United States. The question is, why that building? And was it Waco? Is it Nation of Islam? We should find out an awful lot when the bombs are taken apart. I think it was a great stroke of luck. As you're mentioning, it's hard to talk about luck on a day like today in Oklahoma City, but it was a great stroke of luck that we actually have got diffused bombs. It's through the bomb material that we will be able to track down who committed this atrocity.
All right, Dr. Randall Heather, a terrorism expert, we appreciate your time and your thoughts today, and I assume that we will be speaking with you again here in the hours and days to come.
Dr. Heather spoke of a great stroke of luck. There was even a trace of a smile as he said this. In the authorities' possession of an entire defused explosive device that would lead them to the terrorists responsible for this tragedy. Heather said this was of great importance, a tremendous asset. Why haven't we heard more of this invaluable resource? Why is it that later media output speaks only of a single fertilizer bomb with no further revelations about the other bombs. The anchor said he was sure the public would be hearing more from this expert on terrorism, Dr. Randall Heather. Well, we haven't heard anything from him since. Is it because what he said cannot be made to fit the scenario created for us by the FBI, the ATF, Janet Reno, Bill Clinton, and the horde of media jackals who act as conduits for their misinformation?
Well, we heard earlier from Dr. Heather, who told us that the fact that they were able to find some of these devices undetonated is certainly going to help in their investigation. Let's go down now to Suzanne Steele. Suzanne?
Devin, I got out of Chopper 4 just a few minutes ago and got really the first aerial look at this building. Of course, from this side, you can see the scope of the devastation, but you can't really see how much of the building is affected. Well, from the air, I could see that practically a third of it is blown away, and that the worst of the damage is on the east side, where there's a little pocket where it seems like the force of the explosion hit, and half the building there is gone. When you look at the building, as we've heard from so many people who've been in there, basically some of the floors have just crashed together. I mean, there are some points where you just literally can't get in at all. And then from Chopper 4, at some particular points, we could see all the way through the building. That's the force of the explosion. It just blew out all the walls and everything inside.
Notice this reporter's language. The explosion blew out all the walls and everything inside. She didn't say the walls were blown in or that everything inside was blown further in. They were all blown out. This report, which came early in the ordeal, is consistent with other journalists' news stories. The May 1st edition of Newsweek, on pages 45, 44, and 57, carried illustrations of that devastation with reports that parts of the Murrah building were blown out, not in, showing parts of the Murrah building that were blown directly across the street into the facade of the Journal-Record building. It's clearly a physical impossibility for a bomb in a car or truck to blow parts of the federal building out, making a path directly across the parking site of that car or truck and hitting the Journal-Record building. However, explosives inside the Murrah building would have created just such a pattern of destruction. Further corroboration of the inside nature of this terrorist work may be seen in the May 1st edition of Time magazine, which details the experience of Candy Avey, who had just parked her car outside the building and was headed for the Social Security office when she was blown back, wrapped around the parking meter. Her face hit the car. Now, she was blown back, away from the building, rather than toward it, as would have been the case had the explosion come from the street in front of the building. Note these large pieces of debris that were thrown all the way across the street from the Murrah building.
That we have here, you can see the sheriff's bomb squad. These people have been obviously very, very busy today. They've just pulled up. They're continuing to stay in the area, and as we have more information, we'll bring it to you. Back to you guys.
Where has all this information gone? How did these many reports and all this evidence of an explosion and explosives within the building become condensed into a single fertilizer bomb located in a vehicle on the street outside? The next segment of this tape was extracted from an Austin, Texas public access cable TV interview with the premier explosive expert, General Benton K. Parton. Remarkably, the pronouncements of General Parton and similar statements of other top experts in the field have either been underplayed or altogether neglected by the media. Although this segment has marginal technical quality, it accurately presents the analysis by explosives expert General Parton.
General Parton, would you explain to us a little bit about your career in the United States Air Force?
I was in the Air Force 31 years, active duty, and I spent 25 years in research and development. Most of that was in the weapons area. I had graduate training in armament engineering. I went through the various laboratories at the Ballistic Research Laboratory, where I designed warheads. In fact, I did the design and development work for the first Beaumont warhead there. I had experience blowing up targets and all kinds of terminal ballistics and knowing what explosives will do and what they won't do. I moved on into the Air Force Systems Command. I was a commander of the Air Force Armament Technology Laboratory, which covered all that area for the Air Force. I was the first chairman of in the Office of the Secretary of Defense of the Ammunitions Requirements and Development Committee, which was harmonizing the requirements for all air-delivered weapons for the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps. So I spent 25 years in all areas of air work, and have had a lot of experience in combat damage evaluation also. So I know what you can do with explosives, what you can't do. When I first looked at the reports coming out of Oklahoma, I knew that the truth was not coming out. The media was very much confused or passing out disinformation, and I think some of the officials down there were putting out disinformation, and what was going on down there was totally at odds with what I had 25 years experience of knowing.
Okay.
So I got all the information I could together and took a look at it and ran some analyses, put the damage profiles on the building, and I concluded that there was a very high probability and a high level of confidence that there were demolition charges in the building. And I I felt it was very important that the Senate and the House move to have an independent investigation in Oklahoma City, because it needed to be established without question whether and how many demolition charges were in that building, because it's an entirely different story if you had a bunch of demolition charges in the building in contradistinction to an ammonium nitrate truckload out in front of the building.
General, could a truckload of ammonium nitrate in the configuration that the government says it was have done the damage to the building?
Absolutely not.
General Pardon, let's say that for argument, that bomb was professionally made, it was fused right, timed right, everything was done as an expert's munition expert would have done it. Just what would have been the damage to the building, and would that have been possible if it was all correctly done with that truck bomb?
Very light damage.
General, with your background in explosives and munitions, what's your speculation on what actually happened in Oklahoma City?
I don't want to speculate. I want to tell you what happened. And as I said, I went through literally hundreds and hundreds of pictures that were covering the removal of the debris from the building site. And I was looking for those specific locations and the columns at those specific locations where my analysis said you would have had to have had a demolition charge at. And going through those as they were clearing the site, all those demolition charge positions were clearly revealed. Now, for the television audience, I have a number of charts here, but I'll talk through them, and people can understand what is being said.
Sure.
The first picture shows the Murrah building down there just a few seconds before the blast. And you can see the cars, the light poles, there's an aluminum light pole fairly close to it. And the next picture shows it was taken about 33 minutes after the demolition, and there's a little aluminum light pole that's over there very close to the building. It's still standing. The sign that was over here, the signs are gone, but the frame is still across the street. The frame, the pole that was on is gone, and you have this monstrous gapping side of the building removed. I don't care what was in the truck. It wasn't whether it was a high-energy military explosive or whether it was ammonium nitrate. Either case, you would not have had the energy to do to the building what was done, both from an order of magnitude as well as the pattern of destruction.
Okay.
Now, for the benefit of the TV viewers, let me show a chart of the vertical profile of the building. This chart shows across the A row, the columns in red are not down. That was A2 through A8 are all down. And in the second row, column B3 is down. Before I knew precisely the location, and when I sent the letters to the Senate and the House, I put the truck bomb out where it was supposed to be, and I showed a sphere of ammonium nitrate about 4 feet in 4.5 feet in diameter, with a pressure of 500,000 pounds. By the time it reaches the first column, you're down below, you're down around 2,000 pounds per square inch. By the time it reaches the second row of columns, you're down around somewhere between 285 and 40. Well, just beyond the B column, you're in the 40-pound region. And from there, if you reach out to A7 from that location, you're down around 11 pounds per square inch, and the A7 was a very, very massive and heavy column. There's absolutely no way. Now, what you could have brought it down from there. But I say this: the maximum reach of the bomb would have been into B3 because that's where the column came down. But the truck bomb was not in front of column A3. It was over beyond column A4. And column B4 and B5 in the middle row would have seen a lot more impulse than the column B3, which came down. In fact, it would be about twice as much impulse as column B3. And so if you were going to bring down a column, it would have been B3 or B4 or B5, and certainly not B3. You don't have to go any further than that to know that you had a demolition charge on column B3. And if you look at those columns, they have furring strip on them, and they have sheetrock on them. And the sheetrock and furring strips are still on them. Down at the first and second floor, some of the sheetrock and furring strips have been knocked off, but you see absolutely no spalling damage to those columns. So columns a lot closer than B3 to the truck bomb still have sheetrock and furring strips around them that weren't even knocked off. Now, you can't think about bringing down a column by blast without cleaning that sort of stuff off if you had the power to collapse that kind of size of a column. So you don't need to go any further than that to know that B3 had a demolition charge. There's no other explanation. It's a closed set.
General, you're telling me that somebody drilled those columns and then placed explosives on the columns?
Well, they don't need to have drilled it. They could just take the satchel charge up against that column and have brought it down.
But, General, we had a bomb outside. We had a demolition crew inside. How many personnel do you think were involved in this operation?
Well, it would have taken several, and it would have taken people with access. You got to remember that those federal buildings have guards on the gate, and they have magnetometers and everything else. So it's not only a matter of how many people, but who had access. That's the problem.
General, is there anything we haven't discussed or have overlooked here?
I wanted to point out, I say there were 4 demolition charges inside the building.
Okay.
And I pointed out that there was one at the junction of the header with the column A7. There was also one at the junction of column A3 and A5 and at B3. Now, for the television audience, I have a chart that shows uncovered the evidence. Right here, you can see the area has been cleaned out around column B3, and it was destroyed by demolition charge, appears to be a charge destroyed by demolition charge, at the 3rd floor level. You can see the rebar sticking up above what remains of the concrete column. There's no other extensive damage around on the column. It's just where the detonation wave pressure ran out, and the granular destruction of that column petered out, but you still have the rebar still sticking up. Now, at the header, it's been uncovered. It went across. That's about a 3-foot by 5-foot, or a little less than that. And you can see column A3 standing up. There is no spallation on it. You can see the rebar sticking out of the top. You can see the Art Deco rings around the column. And that was the demolition charge at A3, peeled out the concrete from the rebar down just a little below that header. And you can see on the right side, the header to the right, you can see where the rebar is completely exposed and the concrete is outside of the zone from in around that rebar.
General Pardon, can you give us your conclusion to these matters?
Well, Chuck, my conclusion is that there had to have been those 3 demolition charges in the building at A3, A5, and A7. Panic column B3. Now, when I wrote the letter to the House, I said it was perfectly possible for that to have been done because those columns were available to people from the street. And I expected when I looked at it, if it had been some outside job, the demolition charges would have been at the base of B3, B5, and B7. But they weren't. They were up at the 3rd floor level, which says those charges were on the 3rd floor. And you look at the end of the column there, look at the end of the beam over at column A7. And you can see at the top of that column, you had more destruction than you did at the bottom. In other words, the demolition charge was on top of the column at that juncture, inside of the building and not outside of the building.
Why were they in such a hurry to bring the building down?
Well, I can say that we don't know who did the damage down there, but I know who's covering it up. They not only brought the building down, they cleared out the site, they covered the site with dirt, they carted the 200 tons of building over to a site, and I was under the impression it was a raid out for the possible inspection, but we went over to that site, and there were guards at the gate. You were not permitted to enter, and we were told by the people at the site that all the material was buried. They dug holes and buried it.
So the conclusions of your investigation is that there's another classic cover-up going on.
Obviously. It's a classic cover-up. A classic cover-up.
So if you weren't under that desk, you wouldn't have made it?
Well, my floor was okay, and the ceiling had come down, but there was still concrete above, so it was just a corner of the office that was left that we were in. Everybody else that we worked with is gone.
Are you okay? Just the corner of your office was okay? And the rest of the floor was completely flattened?
And we go over the edge and look, and you can see the sky and as far down as you can look, and just a hole.
And which floor were you on?
5th.
On 5th?
5th floor.
Please listen very closely to this momentous account given when events were still vivid in the mind of this survivor. Note that the building was already going down before any bomb outside had been detonated. Indeed, a street bomb would first blow in the Murrah building's window glass, but this survivor's account has the building quaking several seconds before the glass was blown in.
So just the one corner of the 5th floor wasn't completely flattened?
From the east, I don't know what the west end of the building looks like.
Did everybody just crawled out of the desk after?
It was like slow motion. We crawled under before the glass started coming, and everything it just seemed to roll in on us. I thought it was an earthquake when it started. It was just a kind of a shake, and then everything started going like this, and I dove under the desk, and then all the glass came in and the ceilings came down, and I probably got cut worse if I hadn't been under the desk. I just got little scrapes and scratches. I was really lucky.
Really lucky.
Didn't we just hear this survivor indicate the building was quaking several seconds before the window glass blew in? Therefore, before any street bomb detonated? That part merits another look.
It was like slow motion. We crawled under before the glass started coming, and everything it just seemed to roll in on us. I thought it was an earthquake when it started. It was just a kind of a shake, and then everything started going like this, and I dove under the desk, and then all the glass came in and the...
Let's put some of the pieces together. This survivor's account is in full accord with information on the news clips and General Parton's analysis. First, the bombs on the support columns at the building's lower levels were detonated, severing the columns and projecting debris across the street. Several seconds later, a street bomb detonated, blowing in the 5th floor's windows. The March 31st, 1997 issue of the New American Magazine quotes other top technical experts making statements similar to those of General Parton. While referencing the test demolition of an Eglin Air Base structure, which was similar to the Murrah building, Mike Smith, a civil engineer in Cartersville, Georgia, said, The results of the blast effect test 1 on the Eglin test structure present strong evidence that a single ammonium nitrate and fuel oil device of approximately 4,800 pounds placed inside a truck could not have caused the damage at the Murrah Federal Building experienced on April 19, 1995. Even assuming that the building had structural deficiencies and that the ANFO device was constructed with racing fuel, the air-coupled blast produced from this 4,800-pound device could not have damaged the columns and beams of the Murrah building enough to produce a catastrophic failure. Robert Frias, president of Frias Engineering of Arlington, Texas, after examining the test demolition, concluded the Murrah building would still be standing and the upper floors would be intact had the truck loaded with explosives been the only culprit. Moreover, Frias, a practicing engineer with over 40 years and a registered engineer in Texas, New Mexico, and Louisiana, stated explosives had to be placed near or on the structural columns inside the building to cause the collapse that occurred to the Murrah building. Likewise, Alvin Norberg, a licensed professional engineer in Auburn, California, with over 50 years of engineering experience on over 5,000 construction projects, writes that evidence from this data verifies that the severe structural damage to the Murrah building was not caused by a truck bomb outside the building, and that the collapse of the Murrah Federal Building was a result of mechanically coupled devices, bombs, placed locally within the structure adjacent to the critical columns. Kenneth Gow of Whittier, California, with over a half-century of engineering experience in the aerospace industry, writes in his evaluation, the Eglin test structure report further reinforces the conclusion that a substantial portion of the Murrah building damage was by internal explosions. And indeed, if the omission of these authoritative accounts of General Parton and other technical experts casts doubt upon the credibility of our dominant media, how should we respond to an outright lie in that context? In the issues in May 1st, 1995 issues of both Time and Newsweek, these weekly news magazines showed artists' rendering of a huge crater in front of the Murrah building, a crater produced by the alleged exploding Ryder truck. Both Time and Newsweek stated that the resulting crater was 30 feet wide and 8 feet deep. That's a crater big enough to swallow up a Winnebago or a medium-sized school bus. Now, why did Time and Newsweek just present the artist's rendering and not an actual photo of that huge crater? We know why. Because we have early video footage taken just after the bombing. Time and Newsweek did not present a photo of the huge crater because the huge crater is a lie, a hoax, an obstruction of justice, indeed, a crime against the American people. Where is that huge crater? Our raw footage clearly showed people walking here within the so-called huge crater area. Either those people are over 12 feet tall, or that huge crater is a hoax. Shouldn't this vehicle be at the bottom of that huge crater? Wouldn't such a crater be very conspicuous? Well, where is it? We believe the huge crater hoax is just one glaring part of the bigger hoax created by our media and our government in order to cover up the truth that the Murrah building was blown up from within by people who had free access to federal buildings. Further confirmation of the government media fabrication of a vast crater may be found in Michelle Marie Moore's detailed account of the Murrah building bombing, titled Oklahoma City, Day 1. On page 61, Moore discloses that the plywood that workers placed in front of the building, supposedly to cover the huge crater, concealed instead merely some scattered debris. Eyewitness reports and expert testimony have firmly established that the multiple bombs that were placed inside the building contained explosive charges sufficiently to do all the devastation that we've seen. Therefore, it would appear that the purpose of placing a bomb in a vehicle outside the building was to divert attention from those who had access to those support columns inside. That this aspect of the cover-up has been successful may be seen in the focus of subsequent media coverage and government press releases, all of which wrongfully placed the blame for this tragedy on people who were in disfavor with the government.
Now, we're also hearing from some witnesses on the scene that they've overheard from firefighters that were first on the scene that there was a possibility that there was a secondary explosive device besides the car bomb device outside the building, and that that device may have been placed near the nursery.
Oh my God, another bomb.
Now confirmed through federal authorities that a second bomb has been found inside that federal building in Oklahoma City. It was an explosion at 9 o'clock this morning that did that damage you're looking at right there.
I just took a look down the street at the Murrah building again. I see another bomb truck going, so apparently they're going to try to get out that third bomb that's been talked about.
At the present time, the medical teams downtown are unable to get into the wreckage to retrieve more of the injured because of the presence of other bombs in the area. I've been told by the police department that just as soon as those bombs are defused, they will permit the medical teams to enter.
First bomb that was in the federal building did go off. It did the damage that you see right there. The second explosive was found and diffused. The third explosive that was found, and they are working on right now as we speak, I understand, both the second and third explosives, if you can imagine this, were larger than the first.
The reports I have is that one device was deactivated. Apparently there's another device, and obviously whatever did the damage to the Murrah building was a tremendous, very sophisticated explosive device. So
right now they are saying that this is the work of a sophisticated group. This is a very sophisticated device, and it has to have been done by an explosives expert. Obviously with this type of explosion.
The Justice Department is reporting that a second explosive device has been found in the AP Murrah building in downtown Oklahoma City.
Two other explosive devices were found that were not detonated, and they were larger than the first. But there were more bombs set to go off, according to ATF officials.
That we have here. You can see the sheriff's bomb squad. These people have been obviously very, very busy today. They've just pulled up. They're continuing to stay in the area, and as we have more information, we'll bring it to you. Back to you guys.
We should find out an awful lot when the bombs are taken apart. I think it was a great stroke of luck. As you're mentioning, it's hard to talk about luck on a day like today in Oklahoma City, but it was a great stroke of luck that we actually have got diffused bombs. It's through the bomb material that we will be able to track down who committed this atrocity.
Where's all this information gone?
They dug holes and buried it. It's a classic cover-up. A classic cover-up.